The soft fabric of wool slid into Yin's shoulders, almost in a liquid-like manner. While she hid her hands in her gloves, she turned to Uraraka with a grateful smile. "You're all set, Your Majesty." The brunette nodded. The curve on Yin's lips turned upside down. As uneasiness started to settle within her nerves, she imagined washing away all the nervousness and straightened her back in the process. Then, she exited her chambers in a rush. While she was walking in the hallway, she heard footsteps matching hers, and she turned to come face to face with a wide grin her sister's displaying. "Is this your doing, sister?" Yin asked, striding forwards as they continued to walk. She took a quick peek to see that her sister is also wrapped in clothes more suitable for the outdoors. "I know you're going to think that, Yin." Her sister tilted her head. "But I swear to you, I have nothing to do with it. I believe it's all King Todoroki's wish to explore the town with you." "Yes, but why me? There are others. Midoriya can go with him. He knows a lot more than I do." "Maybe it's because he fancies you." Yin almost tripped on her foot. She then glared at her sister, who is starting to grin. Only this time, she started to wiggle her eyebrows. "For God's sake, I'm married!" "Which is a shame, really." Sin shrugged. Yin scoffed and decided to ignore her sister and proceed to change the topic. "Judging by your attire, I expect you'll be forcing me to let you come along." "Well, it's King Todoroki we're talking about. I would miss this opportunity," her sister said as soon as they got into the foyer. "I'm very thankful now that my little sister is a queen." When the siblings stepped outside, they were greeted with the fancy carriage Todoroki has brought with him, and the king himself, who stood by his transport in all of his equal fancy royal blue uniforms and rose. While Sin smiled radiantly and positive, a dark cold looms over Yin, as she displays the exact opposite expression of her sister. A frown curved her lips as nervousness started to creep up to her stomach upon seeing Todoroki. The Northern King looks puzzled as a single guest he ordinarily invited has doubled, but he's too kind to say no to Yin's sister, especially that she looks like she is so looking forward to meeting him. As soon as they boarded the carriage, it went back down the road and to the deeper parts of the town. The first part of the trip is filled with silence. Sin is awkwardly quiet in the presence of King Todoroki, as what Yin observes, while King Todoroki has been keeping his gaze upon her. No matter how handsome he is, Yin felt uncomfortable as he stared at her. Finally, Sin decided to open her mouth. "Do you have a wife, Your Majesty?" If Yin could roll her eyes, she would. It was a ridiculous and rather rude question for her sister to ask the Northern King, too blunt and instructive. "No, I don't," King Todoroki answered, fixing his gaze towards Sin. "Well, that's rather unfortunate and surprising, yes? Anyone as handsome as you would definitely have a wife by now." "Handsome? Well, that may be flattering. I don't think the ladies would marry me for my looks. After all, marriage is about security." "Well, that may be true. It's no harm for us ladies to wish for a good-looking husband." King Todoroki blinked. It's almost adorable how he's so oblivious and handsome he is. "If that may be the case, my wife will be the luckiest woman." "Oh, indeed she will." As Sin said that, she glanced at Yin with a knowing smile. "That also applied to men having such a beautiful wife." "I guess, but I preferably think appearance don't matter. I believe it is better to see if your two souls and personalities are capable," Todoroki said. Sin seemed to ignore that notion. "Yin here would make a fine wife." Said woman's jaw dropped as she looked at her sister with wide eyes to warn her that she's going a little too far. In order not to further throw off King Todoroki, Yin forced a laugh. I'm flattered as well, dear sister. I'm sure my husband thought the same thing when he decided to marry me, right? Sin seems to caught on as she started to fake her laugh as expectantly well. Exactly, yes, your husband. Once again, silence dominated the space of the carriage. This time, Yin decided to break it. Would you like to explore the town's plaza, Your Majesty? King Todoroki's face seemed to relax as he nodded. Yes, that would be great. A week has passed after King Todoroki's visit and the treaty being signed. A week of reassuring nervousness. Even since then, Igneous has been different. First, it was her husband's sudden change of heart. Bakugo decided to forget about fighting and colonizing other kings' lands to focus on the things needed to be done within his own kingdom. There's also King Todoroki. Ever since Yin's trip with him to town, the Northern King seems to have a pair of eyes set upon her. It didn't help reduce her uneasiness. She shouldn't forget about her sister as well, who has done nothing but being overbearing these past few days since her arrival with her family. The woman has talked of no subject unless it's about King Todoroki and Yin's marriage. And, of course, there's the paperwork needed to be done. After all, the changes of the treaty has changed. Although Yin couldn't really complain about all the paperwork because it's her one and only excuse to escape from her sister and the eyes of King Todoroki. It's also her ticket to spend more time with her husband. What are you staring at? Bakugo asked, not looking up from the parchments he's tending to. It was after dinner when they decided to continue working within the confinements of their dining room. While Bakugo still has a pile of paperwork to do, Yin decided to finish half of her work and continue the rest tomorrow, even though she's somewhat thankful for the escape the paperwork have provided her. It's still trying to do them all at once. You look tired, she said from her seat. Have you been sleeping well? I don't need sleep. Says who? Me and these damn papers. Yin released a chuckle and rested her chin on her palm. You need to get some proper sleep, Katsuki. The papers can wait. Is that why you stopped working? He hummed, taking a quick glance at the parchment she put aside. I prefer not to get too stressed about it. It is important, yes, but so is our health. There was a pause before Bakugo looked up with a smirk. You sound like your sister whenever she's all over her children. Please, don't. Yin groaned and leaned back on her chair. I've had enough of her for today, and the day before. Bakugo scoffed playfully. I heard you took that half-and-half bastard to the town and your sister accompanied you. She once again brought back the conversation that happened during the trip, and every bone in Yin's body tingles. Cringing, she looked up and sighed. Yes, I did. How'd it go? I don't want to talk about it. It's horrible, then. Yin could only smile at her husband. It was then she could feel the frightening the fatigue taking over her, and she only wished to sleep for now. A yawn escaped her lips, and she sat up straight. Go to sleep, Sparkles, her husband said, and she nodded. Yeah, I should. She yawned and then left her seat to approach him. And I expect you to do the same. Bakugo looked up, his ruby eyes fixing on her eye-colored ones. When Yin approached him, his arms immediately wrapped around her waist while she leaned down. Her lips fell on his cheek, and she was smiling when she pulled away. Good night, Katsuki. Are you not feeling well, Your Majesty? Uraka's voice passed through Yin's ears like a faint and crackle music. She heard it, but her mind is too fuzzy to process her words. Your Majesty? Uraka called again, lying all of Yin's clothes on her bed while the royalty sat on her stool by the vanity. Yin hummed in response. There is something wrong? This time Yin looked at the brunette as he asked her. Then her eyes darted to the corset on her bed, and she can feel the ache in her chest beginning to rise. No corset this time, Uraka, she said. Startled, Uraka hesitant on removing the corset from the layer of her clothes. Are you sure, Your Majesty? I thought you liked wearing corsets. It keeps you upright. That's what you said. Yin smiled weakly. Yes, but I don't want to wear one today. The royalty stood from her stool and began to walk towards Uraka to get dressed. It was only then Uraka started to help her with her many layers of clothes that Yin began to process her first question. I don't feel too well. Uraka looked up in worry. The back of her palm came to rest on Yin's forehead. You're not heating up, so you're not sick? Yes, but I feel dizzy. Maybe it's the oysters I ate for dinner last night. Maybe you ate too much? Yin only hummed, thinking that she didn't eat too much oysters, though. Maybe her stomach isn't used about that dish. I'll go prepare a herbal soup for you, Your Majesty. It'll help you get better, Uraka said as soon as she finished helping her dress. Before the brunette could go, a knock came on from the door, and it opened. Once it opened, it revealed Midoriya. There was a smile on his face as he said, Your Majesty, General Aizawa is here. There was no wasting time. Yin forgot about everything and immediately asked Midoriya about the general's whereabouts. He's in the courtyard, Your Majesty. Yin smiled widened. Her hands came to lift up her dress so she could run properly all the way to the courtyard. When she got there, she saw General Aizawa without any company, and also she approached him. General, she made her presence known. Said man took a look at her before offering a bow. Your Majesty. Yin knew she would have to explain everything to him, so she invited him. Let's take a walk. The walk from around the courtyard to the garden wasn't accompanied by silence because Yin immediately started to explain the nature of her coup. Despite the ache in her head and chest, she went on. General Aizawa listened intently, that when they got to the garden, he already had comments about it. I must say, Your Majesty, this is the first time I've ever heard of such a coup. You are saying it will be a peaceful one where no one would die? He said. Yes, I meant to keep it that way, she nodded. Even the king himself, the one you'll be disposing of off the throne? Even him, yes. Aizawa breathed out and looked forward with his eyes turning to slits. He's not going to let your coup end peacefully, you know. Know that you're right, Your Majesty. He will fight for the throne, just as he always does for this kingdom. Yin looked down and immediately got lost in the thought of Bakugo. He's relentless, I know that. We can't convince him to surrender peacefully. There must be a force, and I don't think that favors in your peaceful coup. I have considered that as well. That's why I came up with various plans according to my current and for future circumstances that might happen. At least some of those events will be in our favor. The general hummed. You have a plan, huh? Yin only nodded, and General Aizawa came to a stop for him to face her, with a serious edge on his face. I want you to know, Your Majesty, that a coup d'etat called for a reason. It is violent. It always has been like that. I am confident that you're planning everything, but let me warn you, Your Majesty, no coup could ever land peacefully. The statement seemed to punch Yin right in the gut as she started weighing the possibilities of her coup going into the other direction. She felt even more nervous and noxious. I want to hear it from you, personally, General Aizawa said again. Will you still do it? There was a pause as the wind picked up, carrying the light fabric of their clothes and the strands of their hair into the distance it was dancing to. It almost seemed dramatic, if not for the calming whistle of the wind that descended the thick tension between the two. Finally, Yin answered, Yes, I'll do it no matter what. Aizawa breathed deeply as he nodded, satisfied. Very well then, Your Majesty. That's all I need to hear. I shall prepare my soldiers. Also, I must take my leave since someone will want to take your time. He seemed to be looking at someone behind Yin, causing her to turn around, and there she saw King Todoroki far away enough for him not to hear them. He stood still and seemed to be waiting for General Aizawa to leave. Your Majesty, the general bowed, and when he left, King Todoroki started to approach her. There were only a few of people that Bakugo has learned to tolerate, but he tended not to name all of them, only a few. One is Kirishima, who's currently sitting with him in the dining room, where he's been talking nonstop about every topic his mind came across, while Bakugo himself tries to concentrate on his paperwork to get it done faster. There's really no escaping Kirishima's boisterous voice. And I'm telling you, man, Kaminari nearly shot Sero's balls off instead of the hair in front of him. A laugh followed from the redhead, and Bakugo's eyes twitched from having to concentrate so much. Kirishima kept blabbering, and that was everything Bakugo could tolerate. that followed, however, is someone he couldn't. Try as he might, when Sin came entering in, Bakugo was not able to hide the annoyance in his face. He refrained himself from saying something tough as she and his sister's wife, which makes her sister-in-law. Yin is also one of the few people Bakugo has learned to tolerate, and Sin could be thankful she is his wife's sibling. Your Majesty, she curtsied. Have you seen my sister? Bakugo shook his head and gave a no, in order to not encourage a conversation with even sure Sin would do her best to keep it going until the end of the day. Kirishima, however, seems to be asking for a death sentence as he started conversating with her. The two chatted happily while Sin spotted something and went to the window. Oh, there she is, she said, looking back and forth from the window and the men in the room with a grin. And oh... The shift in her voice permitted Bakugo to look up as if Sin just caught a scandalous right before her eyes. She's with King Todoroki. As if a cold bucket of water splashed all over Bakugo, he suddenly became stiff and in his seat. But a few seconds later, he was rushing towards the window where Sin and Kirishima now stood. It was true. Todoroki and his wife are conversating in the garden. Bakugo's eyes trained on Yin's figure, and there, he felt a knot in the pit of his stomach. The same feeling he had when he saw his wife with Midoriya before, back then. His feelings were full of anger. Right now, all he feels is just the sight of pricking in his stomach and his chest. When he tore his eyes away from them, he went back to his seat and worked again. The thought of nothing but Yin. The thought of something he never imagined himself to think before. He thought of having her attention only towards him. To have her all to himself. Not because it was a display of power or possession towards her. Not because he is angry. Just because it is her. Just her. Yin tried hard to meet King Todoroki's mismatched eyes. It is a beautiful met for everyone to stare at. Yet Yin found herself unable to gawk at them for pure nervousness. Perhaps the King Todoroki had sensed her uneasiness towards him because he looked like he was ready to talk about it. Queen Yin, I hope you don't mind me interrupting your conversation with General Aizawa, he said. No. She shook her head with a forced smile. I don't mind at all, Your Majesty. Shall we walk? His hand motioned for the vast garden that they yet to explore together. Yin mustered up all the courage and agreed, even though the whirlpool in her abdomen is picking up speed and pressure. Then King Todoroki and her were walking side by side. When he opened his mouth, she knew the confrontment will begin. I noticed your wariness towards me, as if you didn't want to trust me at all. He began. Of course I am not offended by that. I even want to ease the tension between us when I invited you to take a trip with me to town. So that's why. Yin cringed internally and scolded herself for not realizing that the Northern King's invitation, as he stares, no ill intentions. He just wanted to mend whatever uneasiness it is between them. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. I did not realize you were aiming for that. I am really sorry. It is all right. Your time right now will make up for it. That is why I want to ask you, Queen Yin, what may be your reason as to not completely trust me? Todoroki stopped and angled his body towards her, entailing a full force and open conversation. Yin did the same. She then told the whole truth, no matter what the king may think of her. I am beyond happy that you intended to stop the war, Your Majesty. A peace was also one of my true wish for this kingdom. However, you've been an enemy for years now. You've taken our lands just as we took yours. And I don't know you so well. Perhaps that it is why I'm still wary when you suddenly decided to make peace with us. You're one true enemy. You are the Glacian King, after all. A prominent and powerful kingdom, and every kingdom's pride is their glory, the glory they've collected by overpowering their kings and taking their lands. I do not believe it is so easy for you just to abandon everything. The war you've been fighting for years, the land you've taken. I believe a king cannot just give it all up. Yes, you may be seeking for peace, But if we look at it, Your Majesty, when the treaty was signed, you've gained peace, but you've also lost, while we gained more. Are you allowed that to happen? Why did you?" King Todoroki was silent as he lowered his head and refused to meet her eyes. Then he spoke. "It was all just for peace." That was a lie. Yin knew it was a lie. He couldn't even look at her while he said that. She suspected that there's something more to this with King Todoroki or his kingdom, and she is yet to unfold the truth about it. "I could not blame you for your reasons. It is smart to you to be wary. I commend you for that. But is that all?" Todoroki finally decided to lift his head. She furrowed her brows and answered while nodding. "Yes, I suspect there might be something else." "What do you mean, Your Majesty?" Todoroki breathed in and out slowly. "I saw you and All Might at the party. That's when I saw the look on your face after that. You've been uneasy in my presence. I was thinking that he might have told you about my father and King Bakugo's mother." Yin's head snapped forward as she stared, eyes wide with curiosity and dread. "Your father? And Queen Mitsuki?" Todoroki blinked and seemed to have considered something. "You do not know, Queen Yin?" "Know what?" Suddenly, the Northern King's face turned solemn and looked like as if he desires to apologize for everything. What he said next turned Yin's blood cold. "It was my father who killed Queen Mitsuki."